I moved into that property because I wanted peace, a little space, a workshop where I could work on projects without someone watching every little thing I did. The neighborhood looked perfect the day I arrived. Clean streets, quiet homes, green lawns stretching across every block. Everything felt calm until the HOA president showed up in my driveway holding violation papers like she owned the entire town. She didn't ask my name. She didn't welcome me to the neighborhood. Instead, she pointed at my trailer, my garage, and even the truck parked beside my workshop. According to her, I already owed HOA fees and had violated multiple neighborhood rules. The strange part was simple. My property wasn't even part of the HOA. At first, I honestly thought it was just a misunderstanding. I calmly explained that I had already checked the county records before buying the place. My land sat outside the HOA boundaries. Legally, they had no control over my property. But the moment I said that, her entire attitude changed. She looked personally offended that someone nearby could live without answering to her rules. Over the next few days, things became uncomfortable fast. She started driving past my property constantly. Neighbors noticed her stopping near my driveway and staring at the workshop, like it bothered her personally. Then the fake notices started appearing. One on my truck windshield, another taped to my mailbox. Each one demanded money for unpaid HOA dues that legally didn't exist. That's when I realized this wasn't about neighborhood standards anymore. It was about control. Luckily, I believe in keeping records. I saved every document from the home purchase, county maps, property lines, legal paperwork. I even installed security cameras around the garage because something told me I'd eventually need proof. Every strange interaction, every warning notice, every time she entered my property without permission, the cameras recorded all of it. Meanwhile, she kept spreading rumors around the neighborhood. According to her, my workshop lowered property values. My trailer looked unacceptable. Apparently, my independence alone offended her more than anything else. But eventually, some neighbors became curious enough to ask me directly what was going on, so I showed them the paperwork. Once people saw the actual county documents, the entire story started falling apart. My property was completely separate from the HOA. No fees, no regulations, no authority. A few neighbors looked genuinely shocked because they had trusted everything Karen told them for years. That's when the atmosphere around the neighborhood slowly started changing. People who ignored me before suddenly waved while walking their dogs. A retired couple from across the street came over to apologize for believing the rumors. One neighbor even admitted Karen had been threatening residents with violations for years over tiny issues nobody else cared about. But instead of calming down, Karen became even more aggressive. One morning, I found another fake violation notice threatening legal action if I didn't pay thousands of dollars immediately. The formatting looked rushed, and the signatures didn't match the official HOA documents neighbors showed me later. At that point, it became obvious she was creating notices on her own without board approval. That mistake changed everything. I contacted the county office directly and requested written confirmation that my property existed outside HOA jurisdiction. A few days later, county representatives arrived in person. Several neighbors gathered nearby while the officials reviewed maps and legal records right there in the street. The answer was crystal clear. My property had absolutely no connection to the HOA. Watching Karen's reaction was unforgettable. For weeks she acted completely confident, but the moment officials explained the truth publicly, her entire expression changed. Suddenly she looked nervous, defensive, quiet. Meanwhile, neighbors standing nearby started whispering to each other as they realized how far she had pushed things without actual authority. Most people assumed the situation would finally end there. It didn't. Karen started sending angry emails across the community, claiming I was somehow avoiding responsibilities. But now people questioned everything she said. Some residents even began sharing their own stories about unfair warnings and constant intimidation. Complaints that stayed hidden for years suddenly started surfacing everywhere. The HOA board couldn't ignore it anymore. At one meeting, board members reportedly discovered Karen had been using HOA resources to target properties without approval. Even worse, Some notices she distributed weren't officially authorized at all. That discovery caused panic inside the board because fake legal threats could create serious liability problems for the entire HOA. Soon the arguments became impossible to hide. Neighbors overheard shouting during meetings. Residents stopped supporting Karen publicly. Even longtime board members looked exhausted by the drama surrounding her behavior. For the first time in years, people weren't afraid to challenge her authority anymore. Meanwhile, I stayed focused on my own life. I spent weekends inside my workshop building projects and fixing equipment exactly the way I planned when I bought the property. Ironically, the more Karen tried to isolate me, the more connected I became with actual neighbors. Families started stopping by to chat. Kids waved while riding bicycles past the driveway. The tension that existed when I first moved in slowly disappeared from the neighborhood. Then came the final turning point. Rumors spread that the HOA board had opened an internal review regarding Karen's conduct. Residents discussed it quietly online and during neighborhood gatherings. By then, too many stories had surfaced for anyone to ignore the pattern anymore. A few days later, Karen quietly stepped away from her position. No dramatic speech, no public apology, just silence. And honestly, the neighborhood felt lighter afterward. People spent more time outside again. Neighbors actually smiled instead of worrying about receiving random warnings over harmless things. The entire area finally started feeling like a community instead of a place controlled by fear and intimidation. As for me, I finally got exactly what I wanted from the beginning: peace. No fake notices taped to my truck. No angry confrontations in the driveway. Just my property, my workshop, and the freedom to enjoy the home I worked hard for. I still keep every fake violation notice stored inside a box in the garage. Not because I'm angry anymore, but because they remind me of something important. Sometimes the best way to deal with controlling people isn't through yelling or revenge. It's through patience, documentation, and knowing your rights. In the end, the biggest victory wasn't proving Karen wrong. It was protecting my peace without losing myself in the process. Because real power isn't controlling your neighbors. It's living freely while treating people with respect.